Daruka, and I'm your workshop chair for tonight. So thank you all for being here. I'm very excited about tonight's workshop. We have Dr. Paul Newton with us, who will be presenting from Toastmaster to published author. While 90% of people, they want to write a book, sadly, very few people ever realize that dream. As a Toastmaster, you're much closer to being a published author than you think. By applying your skill as a speaker and following a time-tested system, writing a book in 2020 could shift from possibility to reality. As a busy chiropractor, Dr. Paul Newton found himself putting write a book in his goals at the beginning of each year. Becoming a published author did not become a reality until it was his goal to make it as a business. Once he knew he wanted to write a book, he created a clear plan and he realized his goal. Let me welcome Dr. Paul, who will present his workshop from Toastmaster to published author. Dr. Paul will show us how to create your plan for your book to be written and published this year. So please help me welcome Dr. Paul Newton.
Thank you so much, Louisa, and thank you everyone for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. It's not Montreal, but I guess this is the next best thing that we can do right now. If you're at this workshop now, I am going to assume that you want to write a book and that you have been thinking about doing it for some time, and maybe you even started writing, but maybe you haven't gotten to finishing a book or to getting a manuscript completed, or you've started over and over again and you go off on tangents. What I'll show you tonight is how to get your writing plan done, how to make it something that you get to every week or several times a week, depending on how fast you want to make this happen. And I'll show you just how to line up things so that start to finish, you know where you're going with your book, and you know you're writing something that your audience is going to want to see. Now, how many of you have been looking to write a book? Just write in the chat if you've been looking to write a book, and yeah, if you started, where you're at with it. Maybe, have you got a book done? It'd be really great to know. So 90% of people want to write a book. That is something that has been determined. The large proportion of the population really does want to write a book. So it's a dream that people have. It comes up time and again, and only a fraction of people make it a reality. But if you follow a plan, if you have a system for doing it, and somebody can lay out the path for you, you can make it a reality a lot more easily than you think. So let me give you a little background on me. That's a shot of me here on the screen from Portugal in March, just before I had to cut my trip short because of this crisis that we found ourselves in. So that's my pre-COVID hair. I miss having haircuts, and it just reminds me of having no hair over my ears. I was a chiropractor for 23 years. I started in Toastmasters maybe in 2001, just because speaking was such an important part of being a chiropractor, and holding workshops and talking to people about what I do and how I can help. That was such an important factor for building my practice. 7 years ago, I changed careers. I moved into ghostwriting and publishing. I put to work my skills at writing articles. I used to write an article every week, just, a little page here and there, and published it to my newsletter. And then I needed to do something new. And what I did is I took my business from being a brick and mortar business in a storefront where I had staff, and I went virtual. And now I work from my home or wherever I am. So when I was in Portugal, I still was seeing clients over phone and internet. I can do it basically anywhere, and I really love the freedom that it allows. And now, what I do with my company, Expert Author Press, I'm the co-owner of it. I have a business partner in Vancouver that I work with. We help people build their credibility, their authority, and their influence by writing a book. A lot of speakers use this kind of tactic. They write a book about their expertise. A lot of business owners and professionals are the type of people that are interested in writing this kind of book. Now, if you're here because you want to write fiction, that's not my area of specialty. And also if you're writing something more personal, like your memoirs, I'm going to show you how you can take that and turn it into something that has more of a far-reaching effect than something that you're just going to share with your friends and family. So what are we going to cover in this workshop? Tonight you'll learn how to position your book project so it gets your writing gets the attention of the right readers. We'll talk about how to turn your ideas into a simple yet organized outline that makes your writing process easy. And we'll talk about how to create a writing plan that gets you excited to write each week. Now, I want to talk about the publishing industry in general because it's a whole new game in publishing today. Basically, publishing is DIY. People still think that it works the way it used to. They're looking for a publisher. They're looking for someone to give them a book deal because they think they have this great idea. And they're wanting somebody that's going to take that idea and run with it for them. The old game worked this way. You pitch your idea to your publisher, a publisher. They give you a book deal if they think your idea is good. They pay you in advance on the royalties. You write the manuscript. They edit it, they format it, design the cover, and they publish it, and they market it for you. Then they send you on a book tour, and you do book signings, and it's all that glamorous stuff that we all think that authors do. That's the old game. The new game, what we have now because of technology, we have access. We have never had more access to all sorts of tools, to people, to platforms than we have today. So the way it works is you come up with a great idea. You fund the writing process. You take care of the editing, formatting, design, and publishing, and you market the book. And then you need to handle the sales as well. So let me just take a look in the chat here and see if I can see it. Where would that be? Now, in the new game, when you are acting as your own publisher, you're self-publishing, or even if you get assistance from a company to help you publish your book, how do you make money? Because in the old game, what would happen is your book would sell in bookstores, it would be sold online, it would be sold at book signings, and you would get paid on royalties. Now, most people don't realize how the royalty game works, but if a book is, say, $20, well, there's the printing cost of the book, then the bookstore takes more than half of the cost of the book. And that eats into all the profits, and what's left for the author is $1 to $2. And if you think about it, to get a really hot selling book, if you sold 1,000 copies, that's pretty good. Because most books sell about 100 copies when people self-publish, or less. But if you sold 10,000 copies and you're getting $1 to $2 per book, that's still not going to be a very big payday. Right? If you were looking to retire or quit your day job and you sold 10,000 books, that's only $10,000 or $20,000. So you'd probably have to keep working. There's a better way that you can actually use your book to create an income. And this is what I want to share with you, because most people think that becoming an author, becoming a published author is some sort of glamorous thing. And it is a big goal, it's a huge goal, and it's something to have on your bucket list. But if you understand what you need to do to actually make it a good ROI, to get a good return on your investment, then it can become a process that is really rewarding, not just because you accomplished and hit a milestone by writing that book, but that you produced something that can keep paying you back and keep supporting your growth and evolution as a person and as a speaker. So today's successful authors, what they do And this is what a lot of the professional speakers that we see, a lot of our mentors out there do. This is how they use a book. They spend time choosing their ideal reader, and I'm going to cover this in more detail later because it's so important. Then they have a plan for providing value to that reader. And that is the most important thing about choosing your subject matter. And if you're telling a story about yourself, your stories need to provide value to the reader. The reader must find a point in hearing your story, and more importantly, they should be able to see themselves in your story. See something about themselves, something that they want to or aspire to overcome, so that they can get the same sort of results or transformation that you did. Then the successful author will write a good book. And it doesn't have to be a fantastic book. It doesn't have to be your literary piece of magnificence that you're going to leave the world. It just needs to be good. A good enough book that you work with will work really well for you. Then what they do is they speak and they use the book to promote themselves. So they use their book not as something that they sell to make money, but as a tool that promotes them, shows that they have credibility, shows their authority, and gives them influence. The same way speaking does that. So when you're standing at the front of the room and you have an audience and you have the attention of people, and the fact that you're up there, what that does is that makes you the authority. If you have a book while you're standing there and you show people your book, like this is my book, whenever I go out and speak somewhere, I give this away. I will give physical copies to people in the audience. If I'm doing this online, I will do virtual copies that I give away. So that will be in the resources that I share in the chat towards the end of this talk. But I always want to put my book into the hands of the people I'm speaking to, because I speak and use the book to promote myself. And then the way that you make money from the book is you sell the products and services that your business has, the way that you use it to improve people's lives. So maybe if you're a speaker, you have some sort of program or course that you offer. If you're a coach, you can use your book to promote your coaching services. If you have physical products that the book is talking about, or some sort of even kind of mechanical service. I have one client who wrote a book on HVAC, heating and air conditioning, and he used that book to get other HVAC contractors into his business that markets for HVAC contractors, and he made a lot of money that way. So selling on the back end of your book is where the real money lies, because who wants to make $1 or $2 for a book when you can make thousands of dollars selling services to the people that see the value that they get from reading the book? So when you're thinking about your book, and all of you that said you were writing a book, you've started, you have these book ideas, think about who this idea is good for, and where could you find a bunch of those people so you could get your book into their hands. And that way, the beauty is you don't have to sell a lot of books. You just need to get some books into the right hands of people that will get a lot of value from the transformation that you provide. And that's how you get a good ROI on your book, because even if you do everything yourself, there are still costs in writing a book. It can be quite expensive just in the matter of time and effort, but editing services, people can spend anywhere from $1,000 to, I've seen people spend $10,000 on editing. And it's a matter of knowing how much you need, how much you can do on your own, how much you need to pay someone else for their expertise for. Then there's design, there's layout, and there's getting into distribution. Now, distribution these days, you can get yourself on Amazon, and that's part of it. And it is one of the biggest distributors, or possibly the biggest distributor at this time in the book industry. And you also want to get into virtual and physical bookstores where you're found as a print-on-demand book. And the last thing you want to do is actually stockpile a whole bunch of books and be sending them out. So knowing how the system works and how to get your book out to people is really key, because you want to find that balance, that sweet spot between the number of books you carry on hand and the ones that people are ordering from Amazon or from other bookstores, knowing also that you're only going to get a couple of dollars per book. Now, I carry a stock of possibly 50 to 100 books on hand all the time. And if I have a bigger engagement, I will order more and have them sent to wherever I'm speaking. But you don't want to pass up on the really big dollars by trying to make a sale of a $20 book when getting the book into a person's hands who could use your services could mean a sale of a lot more. And that's just the business behind the book. And I realized that not everyone came here with the thought of, oh, I'm going to start a business when I write my book, but I wanted to really get across the reality of the publishing industry. Now, just to give you an example, this lady, Kay White, she's in the UK, and she's a lady that I know that helps women in the workforce get better jobs and get paid what they're worth, because sadly, even though it's 2020, there's still a disparity between what men get paid and what women get paid, and it should not be that way. And she helps women stand up for themselves and really claim their space in the workforce and shows them how to ask for what they're worth and get it. So you can see here, she's speaking to an audience. It's not a very big one. It's actually an event she held. But whenever she has an audience, even if it's a small event, she can easily turn a speaking gig like that into thousands and thousands of dollars, because her program for helping those ladies is, I think, around £5,000, if you can imagine. So that's like $10,000 or maybe even more. I don't know what our Canadian dollar is doing to the British pound. But her book, It's Always Your Move, Purposeful Progress for Corporate Career Women, she gives that to every woman there, and she'll follow up on a call with people. And by having conversations with them, she can get them enrolled in her program. And she provides them with great value, and her book is working for her. So that's how you get the payoff. Now, you might be wondering, how do I write a book like that? This is a resource I'm going to give you. It's called my Write Book Template. And I designed this to help our authors, the people that I work with, get their outline designed and get all their thoughts into a cohesive document so that they can get a writing process started. And I'll show you this at the end. I'm going to give it to you to download. And I'm really proud of this document because I've been working on it with my team, with my assistant for, it's been a number of months. It's a big upgrade from the first one I did, because the first one was just, it was a Word document that I turned into a PDF. Now this one is fillable, and it takes your ideas and it intersperses them further down into the template so that it prompts you to format your ideas and lay them out in a way that creates your plan. So I'm really excited to share this with you. And I'm going to explain to you some of the things that you'll find in it, because it's about 20 pages. Now, it starts with positioning your book, and you don't want to skip this, but sadly, a lot of people skip right to the writing portion, and they'll get right down to writing out all the things that are swimming around in their heads, and they're so excited to get on the manuscript. But you want to start with the positioning right away, because when you choose the ideal reader for your book, you will find that person you want to target, and you can find the voice that you want to speak in so that they will hear you. And if you really understand who that reader is, and you do the exercises in the book to find that out, you will really save yourself a lot of time and effort, because you will write the right book that reaches them instead of writing a book that's way off base. And I'll show you what can happen when you don't write the right book. So it starts off with, who is your ideal reader? We want to find the perfect person that resonates with you and resonates with what your life experience, what your expertise are, what you've overcome. Maybe they want the same things. We want to find that person. And once you decide who you're writing for, you want to ask yourself, what is their big problem? What are they struggling with? What keeps them up at night? What are they so worried about? And I have another template that I'm sharing with you. It's the storytelling template. I'll explain that more at the end as well. But it goes through a list of questions that you can ask yourself to get underneath the external surface that we show everybody, because we're trying to look like we're strong human beings that have it all together. And we don't want to show people that we're just like a couple of stitches away from coming totally unhinged or whatever. And I don't know if I'm speaking just for myself, but usually I'm just kind of holding it all together and looking like I'm semi-competent whenever I pull up to something. And if people look a little bit further, they might find some of my big fears or my insecurities. And we all have this, but we'd like to show people that we have this really like together, sound, professional exterior, and that there's no weakness underneath. So when you want to get to someone's biggest fears and the big problem they have, you can't just go, what's your biggest fears and your biggest problem? Because people get defensive. And my storytelling template shows you how to dig underneath that and put people at ease so they can answer those questions, or it helps you to intuit some of those questions. Then you want to ask, how does your ideal reader struggle in their life because they have this big problem? A lot of people that are coaches or that want to help guide somebody in overcoming a problem, they think of the immediate problem at hand. The thing is, there's a lot more reach that a problem has, and a problem can affect a lot more things in our lives than we immediately think of on the surface. And it's those more far-reaching things that actually have the bigger impact on us. And I like to use the example of when I was in practice as a chiropractor. Most people came in because they had neck or back pain. And that neck or back pain, it was enough to drive people to come in because they hurt. And so we think problem, pain, solution, no pain, get rid of the pain. And that is true, but that only gets to the real surface of what's going on. I know for a fact as a chiropractor and the psychology in humans that physical pain is usually a manifestation of deeper emotional pain or underlying insecurities and fears as well. Now, of course, there's physical reasons we hurt ourselves, but there are a lot of emotional and psychological reasons for why that pain really messes up our lives. When I would be talking to a new patient that I didn't know, I'd want to ask them, how is this impacting your life? And they'd be like, well, I heard. And then I would ask them, well, what are you doing differently because of this pain? And they would maybe tell me that I've had to take time off work and I'm not doing much around the house. I'm not taking the kids to practice. I can't play with them anymore. I am not spending as much time with my wife, and I'm a little bit concerned because I'm not pulling my weight. And then I'd ask them, well, how is that impacting your life? And then they'd tell me that, well, I'm stressed more. I feel insecure about work because I'm thinking I might not be able to keep my job, or I won't get promoted, or I'm going to get passed by. So I'm really afraid of that. And then I won't be able to provide for my family. Or maybe they think, if I'm not able to take care of the kids, my wife's going to get upset with me. Or maybe it's actually affecting intimacy and their ability to connect, and it's affecting the relationship. So when we get to those deeper fears, it starts to really hit home with why this problem is really important and why this solution that you can provide to it can be really life-changing. And when you get that kind of positioning, now you're on the right track to writing the right book. And then you really want to look at how your ideal reader's life would look if that big problem was solved. And again, it doesn't come down to if they have pain and you do your your solution or your treatment or your whatever coaching it is, or whatever you're offering as a solution to the problem, it's not that the pain goes away. Like they had a problem, now they have no problem. It's like if somebody was in pain and now all of a sudden they started dancing again, and they actually decided to sign up for maybe a half marathon, or they want to do something that they had aspired to their whole life, but they were held back from because of the pain. And that's just the example of me as a chiropractor. But when I think about relationships, I think of, wow, somebody, maybe they lost weight and they became more confident. Maybe they started buying nicer clothes because they were fitting into nicer outfits, and they met somebody that they wouldn't have met before because they were more confident. And all of a sudden they got this wonderful relationship, and they ended up living happily ever after. That's the kind of situation we want to be looking for in positioning the book. We want to know, how can we make this book part of somebody's happily ever after? Or maybe how they marry into royalty or marry a prince or a princess. We want to think about, how is this book going to take them from struggling with this problem that they are battling with, the biggest fears that they have in their lives, and take them from there to getting this promised future, this promised land. And when you can get that into your book, all of a sudden you will have a lot of attention from your ideal reader. And what I've described there is your transformation. How do you transform lives? How will your book transform lives? This is something that as Toastmasters, we all are quite aware of, because we really, really do enjoy the inspiration. We like bringing people the whole thought of transformational processes. So when you think about the story you want to tell about yourself, the story you want to tell about a process or something that you've overcome, something that you think can change lives, what transformation are you providing in the world? Are you promising to your readers? When you can think in terms of that, then you're on the right track to making sure you write a book that's going to give you a good ROI. Now, what I'd like to tell you about next is what can happen if you don't position your book right. And this is a friend of mine, Majeed Mogharreban. And some of you may know him if you're in the Ottawa area. And he's a very good speaker. He's very entertaining. He holds events for speakers to train and to learn how to become a highly paid speaker. And I've had the privilege of knowing this fellow for maybe about 5 years. And over that time, we've become really good friends. And he's brought me out to different events. We were just in Portugal, right in March, before the COVID crisis hit. And we were in this mansion. And I have to say that most of the conversations that I have with this guy, Majeed, start with, so I booked this mansion in ... And I was wondering if you wanted to go on a road trip or show up somewhere and do something crazy. And that's how he rolls. But before he really found his niche and figured out who his ideal reader was, he was working as a coach, and he was helping people with their businesses. And what he found out was that, looking at all his clients, most of them were some women business owners. So he thought, geez, look how I'm helping them. They're getting great results in their businesses. They're getting more clients. That's really badass. So he wrote a book that he called Badass Businesswoman. So you have this hairy guy here who is a coach for badass businesswomen. As you can imagine, a lot of women were not thinking that that was their badass coach. So the book didn't go over so well. And he told me that he wasn't totally pleased with the amount of work that he'd put into writing this book and how much he'd spent on the process, because he'd gotten some coaching and training on how to write the book, and he'd paid for a publishing deal. So his Badass Businesswoman book was not working for him. And I thought, hey, we could fix that. We can totally reposition the content of your book so that it appeals to the right person. And what he ended up doing is rewriting just parts of the book. We rewrote the introduction. We decided who we wanted this book to appeal to, and we made it appeal to small business owners. We called it The Small Business Trap: Why Most Entrepreneurs Work Too Hard, Earn Too Little, and Can't Grow Their Business. And Majeed, what he did is he read my book. This is my book, The Expert Author Effect. And he really liked the fact that it wasn't too thick because he could get through it quickly, but it also had a lot of succinct points on how to use your book to grow your speaking business. And he had highlighted different parts of it. And he asked me one day when we were meeting, do you actually do this? Do you send your book out to potential clients, potential leads, and then follow up with them to see if you can get speaking gigs? And I said, yes, I do. And do you actually use your book at speaking gigs, give it away, and then use it as a lead magnet? And I said, yes. So what he did is he held a breakfast. He booked a restaurant, got the back room, invited his network of people that could be clients, and got them a free breakfast. And he put a book at every seat. So everybody had his Small Business Trap right in front of them. And he gave a talk. And he talked about how people can grow their business, how they can, with guidance, get to a higher earning level, get their bills paid, have more time. And then he offered a consultation with them. And what he did is he turned a free breakfast with his book into a lot of business. It turned into thousands and thousands of dollars of consulting for him. Now, he's since written another book, become a highly paid speaker. And he used to say to me, Paul, I'm really jealous of your niche because you help people that don't have a book get a book. And it's so concrete and easy. Whereas I'm coaching people in all different walks of life with all different businesses. And I don't know really how to stop being everything to everyone. And I said, Majeed, you are really a great speaker. You're phenomenal on stage and everybody loves to listen to you. And you're amazing at sales. So why don't you show people how to speak and sell their products? And so that's what he did. He couldn't be clearer than on his book title, Become a Highly Paid Speaker. And now he's killing it with that book because he knows who he was writing for. And he wrote the book that appeals to their, not just their fears, but also to the big dream that they're looking for. So how do you create your writing, your outline? And this is going to be really straightforward and simple. But what you start with is, if you've gone through the process of figuring out who you're writing for, now you want to think what's important to them. The first thing you do is a topics brain dump. And in my write book template, there's a place where you can write a whole bunch of topics down. That gives you space for 20, but maybe you want to come up with 50. But if you're really zeroing in, there should only be a certain number of big topics that you want to cover. And from the 20 topics or the list of maybe 50, whatever you come up with, you want to narrow it down. So create your short list of the top 10. And your top 10 list becomes the chapters in your book. So you can take these top 10 topics, put them in the order that you think that they should go in the book, the way that makes the most sense for getting from the problem that they have to the solution that they want. And once you have those in order, that's your outline. And from there, with each chapter, list 5 subtopics. And once you have the 5 subtopics per chapter, you're just breaking down the topics. There you have it. You've created a writing plan or an outline. And now that it's broken all down, you can fit this into your calendar. And what I'd suggest is you start with how long is your book going to be? Now, let me just give you an idea of what a book, number of book pages looks like. This book, The Expert Author Effect, is 120 pages. It's not too thick, but it's still a solid book. And people go, yeah, that's a book. Kay White's book, the lady I was talking about earlier, her book is 220 pages. So it's about double that. 30,000 words in a regular sized book is about 120 pages. So that just gives you an idea of the word count. And we advise most of our clients to write a 30,000 page or 30,000 word book. And if you have 10 topics that have turned into 10 chapters, now you're looking at 3,000 words per chapter. And remember, we broke it down into 5 subtopics per chapter. So now you're looking at 600 words per topic. Now think about what 600 words really means. That's like a blog post that a lot of you have probably written. It's like an article, or it's like a 6 to 7 minute Toastmaster speech. It's something really doable, isn't it? You could write 600 words. And if you decided you were going to handle one topic per week per se, and you can do it faster, but if you were just going to schedule it out to, you have a writing day every week where you have to write 600 words, that's going to take 5 topics per chapter, 10 chapters, 50 weeks. So that's still under a year if you start now doing what I'm telling you. Of course, if you get so inspired, you could write on 2 of the topics, or maybe some of your topics will get a little bit longer and encompass a couple of topics. I know it's not that cut and dry, but structure like this can make the big difference between whether you get your book done or not. Now, here I am sharing these resources. I'm going to put them in the chat after, but the Write Book template is what I've been talking about all along that helps you break down your thoughts and your brain dump into these chapters and helps you organize it all. The other thing that I told you about is the storytelling template. And that one is like kind of like my baby. I'm so proud of this one. And in fact, tomorrow I'm actually doing a talk on this topic on storytelling to Microsoft Global, because when I was doing a talk to a webinar that Majeed was holding, the fellow I was telling you about, Badass Businesswomen, he had this guy in his audience that was looking for someone who could speak on soft skills to their Microsoft employees. So I have a talk on this tomorrow. It is storytelling, which is the most powerful tool you can use. As Toastmasters, I don't need to preach to the choir here, but telling a good success story, a good story about somebody that you've worked with to help overcome something, whether they're a client or maybe it's somebody that you just know that you've helped, but telling a success story properly, it has so much power and influence over people because our minds relate to stories. When somebody starts telling a story, what's been shown on MRI is that when people are listening to talking without a story, everybody's getting distracted. They're having their own thoughts. And if they do an MRI on 5 people simultaneously listening to something other than a story, their brains are doing all different things. Someone's thinking about lunch. Someone is thinking about a text they just got. Someone else is daydreaming about somebody that they just met. And their minds are all over the place. The activity is random all over the place. Once somebody starts telling a story about a person who's having an experience and what they were really afraid of, their hopes and fears and their big dreams, people connect in a different way. And what they found on MRI of those 5 people was the brainwaves all got in sync and they were having the same experience in the same part of their brain. Their brains had aligned. So imagine the power if you are trying to convince someone or influence somebody to come over to your way of thinking, or maybe you want to influence somebody to try your system for something, or to take your approach to changing their lives. If you can get their brains to align to yours, then you win them over. And that's what storytelling does. Now, my storytelling template, it is something else that I've been working on for a while. And what happens is it coaches you to come up with the people that you've helped and make a list of them. So you list off 10 people. And then in the template, because it's kind of smart, it feeds the people that you've helped, it feeds their name down into the template and it prompts you to answer questions about each of them. And what you get is a really powerful success story on each of those people. So I really encourage you to download these. I'm going to put them in there really soon because I'm almost done here. And I'd like to share with you some of the other things that I have for you. You can download a copy of my book at expertauthorpress.com. And my book is The Expert Author Effect, the subtitle, How to Write a Book That Automates Your Sales and Marketing. Now, that's pretty flashy, yes, I know. The thing with a good book is that if you write the right book and you just put it out there, it works for you. And I'll just tell you that I've gone to speaking gigs, I've done online speaking gigs, and just given books away. And 5 years later, I've gotten a client. Or a year later, I get a client. And some of the deals that I do can be to the effect of like $25,000 because we're talking a full-on ghostwriting contract. Some of the deals aren't as big, but when I speak and I give a book out, I can always find somebody that's looking for the type of service I'm offering. This is something that works really well. And as Toastmasters, we are already thinking of how to communicate effectively, how to win people over, how to have credibility, influence, authority. Becoming a published author just gets you that much closer because the word author is found in authority. And if you get your book written this year and you publish the right book, you're going to find that you will have a level of credibility that you never could dream of. And I really encourage you to take this time to focus on what it would be like to get that book published and set a date for when you'd like to do it. And all you have to do is work the numbers backwards. I shared them with you. If you're doing that 30,000 word book, just take the time frame, divide it by the number of topics, and you'll figure out how many topics you need to write per week. Now, I do these talks because honestly, I really just love hearing people's stories. I love to help people find their value, find what they're really good at. And a lot of the times when I listen to people, I hear things that they didn't know that they were good at. I also hear things that they never associated or put together because, you know, when people have two different careers, like say me as a chiropractor, what does being a chiropractor have to do with being a published author? Well, my empathy is really good. My ability to hear the emotional side of things is really, really refined. So when people start telling me about what they do, I already can feel what their potential client or the person they're writing to is feeling or thinking. And I can give them insights into what they might want to do in their book. And so that's how I find my sweet spot from two different careers as a chiropractor and as a ghostwriter and publisher. That's the sort of thing that I love listening for. So if you want to talk to me ever, I encourage you to write to me at paul@drpaulnewton.com, and I'll answer every email. And if you want a copy of my book, I will actually mail you the physical copy if you send me your address by email, and I'd just be happy to send you a copy in the mail. Also look for me on LinkedIn at Dr. Paul Newton. I love to hear people's stories and ideas, and I will tell you if that's a viable idea and what you can do to change it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'd like to open it up to questions here. I hope that I wasn't speaking to the air because I couldn't see anybody.
This was really, really good. Thank you so much for the presentation, Dr. Paul. It was very insightful, and you give us all the next steps of what we need to do so that Monday morning or tomorrow morning, we could get started and write our first book, our second book. So thank you very much. So great job, Paul. We're getting comments already. Thank you very much, Paul. Here's a question. How much does it cost to self-publish a book?
There's a lot of different places you can go to do that. And it can be anywhere from maybe $9.99, like $1,000, to you can find up to $5,000, depending on what you need done. Now, if you just bring a manuscript to me and you need your cover designed and you want it laid out and formatted like a nice book, and so it all looks good, like the interior is nicely done and you've got your table of contents and the ISBN and everything, that is a $2,500 investment. So that's if you have everything, and we'll choose the right title, the right back cover copy, because you have to sell the inside of your book, and you need to make sure that when it shows up on Amazon and it shows up in searches, that the right stuff that grabs your audience's attention is going to show. Because a lot of people waste the valuable real estate on the cover and on the back cover, and they say the wrong things and they lose people. So it can cost anywhere from, say, $9.99. I don't know. I mean, you could even try to go cheaper and do it all yourself, but the learning curve is so high and there's so many mistakes to be made. So it does pay to spend some money to get it done right. If you are one of those lifelong learners, you could probably figure it out, but I've seen some really, really bad jobs that have made people look worse than if they hadn't published it at all.
It's a good point. It's a good point. We want to do it and we want to do it right. Okay, so here's other comments. Love this. Thank you, Renee. Shannon says, thank you so much. You're very inspirational. I'm going to start this tomorrow. So you got us pumped. Thank you very much. This was very useful. So there's a lot of comments. I'm just looking down to see the questions. So no questions so far. I don't know if there's any questions from the audience. Anybody has a question for Dr. Paul? So here's a question from Renee. Speak about content.
About the content of the book?
Yeah, I did miss a little bit of your talk, Paul. I was with a client. However, you talked a little bit about you did articles and things. So did you take some of that content to use to put in your book, things that you'd already written, maybe a blog or anything like that, or articles and all of that stuff?
That is definitely a strategy you can use. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you have to consider, Renee, is how the content flows together. Mm-hmm. I like to use that now, but I start my content with the plan that it'll get incorporated into something. Mm-hmm. Like my storytelling template, mm-hmm. I wrote 3 articles and pulled them together because I knew what I wanted to have in there. Mm-hmm. But an article has to have a beginning and end, and it has to bring someone up to speed really quickly and then get them somewhere. And that can work, but stitching a bunch of articles together can get a little disjointed. So it can generate the content. The thing is to really make sure that you're weaving it together in a nice flow that keeps the reader engaged and not feeling like, where's she going with this, or that you're concluding too soon.
Mm-hmm. The flow is very important. Thank you, Paul.
Yes, yes. Also, feel free to email me if you don't get a hold of these. And again, that's just paul@drpaulnewton.com. I did see something about ebooks.
Yes, I wanted to find out if you've ever done simply as an ebook only without the paper version, and what are your thoughts about doing that?
Yeah, Sanjeev, I think ebooks are great because you can get them out really quickly. The thing with electronic versions is, in this digital world, we're so overstimulated, and we get everything in ebooks. Like, I mean, you can drop an ebook into a text, or it can be there on Facebook, and it doesn't grab attention the same way as this solid thing that somebody has in their hands. And I've given them out to people, and they will see me like years later and say, I still have that book. It's still sitting on my shelf, right? So it has clout, and it's my business card on steroids, and nobody throws it away. Now, ebooks, I've personally been guilty of this. I think that's really important. I want to read that. I want to get into it. And then it gets lost in the emails that go down too far, or it's on my computer somewhere. But with a physical book, even if they're not reading it, it's still reminding them of me, which is what I want.
Here's one of the questions. How to clarify when there are more than one ideal reader, but 3 or 4?
The thing is, if you have 3 or 4 ideal readers, either you want to find a common thread that you can write to, or you might have to write a couple of books, or you're not targeting your niche enough. If you have 3 or 4 different divergent paths you can take, you want to spend some more time thinking about what's the best place to invest your time and efforts, because a confused mind says no. Like as soon as you lose people, they don't follow you and they'll put the book down or they won't think it applies to them. So you're way better off finding one reader that you can resonate with and they go, yes, that's for me. Like you get me. Because if you write to two different people, immediately you're split and people are going to think it's not cohesive and people don't feel it. And you want to have that. Okay. You want to make sure that somebody is just like, wow, you actually know my problems. And that's why I suggest get that one ideal reader.
Good advice. Thank you. Here's another question, and it links with one of the questions that I personally had. So it says here, hi, with the current physical distancing brought by COVID and the possibility of things going online and less on one-on-one, any pointers on how to find audiences? And linked to my question, I was wondering, do you use Facebook ads to connect and find your audience?
Finding audiences is really a matter of building trust. And I'll tell you that just finding people that I know that know me and can build me up is really helpful. Like having that friend of mine, Majeed, who has a speaking audience, I piggyback on his authority. And then because he introduces me and plays me up so well, everybody just has his confidence in me. And what happened is, because I was in a Facebook group there, somebody that already knew Majeed found my storytelling template and asked me to do a talk tomorrow at Microsoft. And that's just been happening more and more because you put their materials in the right place and people find it valuable. And to speak to your question, Louisa, about Facebook ads, pushing stuff out to people, it can be hit or miss. And you don't have the trust. And what I'd suggest is get into groups where people are already asking questions about what you share about, and where people are looking to build relationships, because it only takes one person that has access to another group of people, and they will ask you. And if you're ready, like if you have something, if you have materials, then, and that's why I'm so proud of my write book template and my storytelling template. I'm so happy to share it with you. And I put it out there and people go, wow, this is really nice. And then they'll share it. And that works for you as well. So having the resources and being ready is powerful. Also, one other thing that I would suggest is have a talk prepared. Like have your signature talk prepared, something that you could deliver it tomorrow. And I'm not talking like a Toastmasters, like polished that you're going to win the championships of speaking. I'm talking just have your slides ready. Oh, and I have to get my slides into the chat. So if I don't, whoever was asking about those slides, please message me or email me and I will get them to you if I don't get them into the chat in time. I hope that answers the question and the two parts.
Thank you. And by the way, thanks so much for sharing your templates. It's going to definitely be useful to me, and I'm sure to everyone who's on the line today. And, we'll share it to others. So
yeah,
it's going to go out there. Okay, so I have another question here. You mentioned discussing memoirs. Could you do this, please?
Yes. I don't have a lot of experience with writing memoirs because I've focused more on the business side of things, writing business books or books that help people to do something. But what I do know is memoirs can be a really rewarding thing to write. And I was speaking at the Atlanta Writers Club in Atlanta last May, and it was a year ago last May. And it was actually a lady that, the keynoter was a lady that had written her memoirs, and people wanted to find out about it. And so she would go out and speak and promote her memoirs, but it's a story about her. And what I would suggest is look for the commonalities of how does the story about you relate to all people in a certain group, and how could it help people overcome something, and look for ways that you could provide additional help beyond just your memoirs. Because if it is your memoirs and say you're, I don't know, like you're in a position of authority, like say you were the prime minister or the prime minister's wife or husband or whatever, and it was an exciting life that people wanted to know about and everybody knew you, then probably people would buy your book. But if it was me and my exciting life that only a few people that know me would even care about, I'm going to just have to force my friends to buy my book, and they probably won't even read it. I don't know. But so those are the things you have to consider about making the investment in writing a book, time-wise, money-wise. And so if you can double things up and turn your stories into something that inspires others, but also gets them to take action further with you to maybe get into some coaching program or some personal development program, that will actually make your book serve you in generating some sort of ROI.
So I think there's one last question. It kind of covers what you mentioned in the intro, but I'll mention it here. It says, it seems the type of books you discussed is to solve people's problem. For example, coaching, personal development, or sales category. Is your presentation also relevant for novels or fiction, or just autobiographies or leisure books? What are your thoughts on that?
My specialty is in the how-to and books that help people. That's just the niche that I've chosen. In terms of writing a book for like a novel, that is a piece of work, a work of art, and something that involves storytelling to a degree that I really don't hold a candle to, but I aspire to write like that. I certainly do, but that will take a lot more learning in my lifetime. In terms of writing things like memoirs or things that are more personal, everybody has their own purpose for doing those things, and I understand that. And a lot of us, we want to leave some sort of legacy, or there's people we want to leave these books for, and certainly by all means do it. We have to consider the investment. Is it something that the value balances out the effort and the expense? And I fully agree that writing something for grandchildren to have to or to pass down is valuable. So it is a process you can use. You can, as any project that you start with a plan and a structure, you can get through. And using my template, you can build a structure and then build in the stories and the more of the flair that you add to it. And I think it could work, but again, I'm not the expert on that. So I encourage you to try, and it's just not something that I've delved into.
Thank you so much. Thank you for answering this question. Thank you for answering all the great questions. It was very active, a lot of questions on the chat box. So thank you so much, Dr. Paul. This was honestly for me, I talk for myself, like it was like a perfect time in my life. I am planning on writing a book, and you give me the motivation. The 4-month time frame, I think it's very, I don't know if it's doable, but it's inspirational. So I will definitely try within a year to write a book. And I'm sure you inspired many here on the line today, and others, because this will be a video recorded, will be on YouTube, I believe. So many more will see and will be inspired to write their book, and we will be using your PDFs. So we will have access in the next couple of seconds. So thank you so much for joining the workshops and doing this great presentation and helping us all.
Oh, thank you, Louisa, and I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for your attention. I really value the time that you spent in front of your computers tonight. Anybody that wants to hang out and wait for me to get the slides onto here, just leave the chat open so I can do that. And anything else, I will make sure I get to you. Other questions here?
Paul, Renee here. Thank you for such a great presentation this evening. I so appreciate you sharing your knowledge, and I think you've inspired a lot of us here this evening, me included. And I just want to confirm, is the PDF, is it the expertauthorpress.com? Is that where it's at?
I think you can get a copy there, like in the resources section. If you click on more, you should see them there.
Yep.
And everything, my website should have access to all the different resources. Perfect. And if you can't find them, again, just contact me or contact info, and Stella, my assistant, will send them. But I will make sure if you really want them and you reach out to me, I will get them to you, I promise.